Welcome in everybody to the Real Estate Minute Show. We're talking about equity today. When someone talks about equity, generally they talk about it as the difference between the value of their house today and what they owe on it. Okay, that's your equity. How much, if I sold the house today, how much would I get? So let's say you bought a house years back for $500,000, you took a $400,000 loan, and now you're selling it for $1 million. Simple math, $1 million less $400,000 of mortgage, you have $600,000 equity in your house. And that's what you hear a lot of people talk about. Oh, I have so much equity in my house, or everybody has so much equity, the chance of defaulting on the loan is so low, which is totally true. But there's things that affect equity, okay, that people don't talk about, which can have a significant impact on your equity position in your house and on the decision to maybe sell it or not. And that is that you need to include the costs you paid when you bought the house to close on it, escrow charges, loan fees, etc. Any costs that you spent during the time of owning the house for the years on remodeling, fixing things, add them all up. And then the cost of selling the house, that's the third piece. When you sell the house, you have brokerage commission, transfer taxes, title insurance, all kinds of things, depending on what state you're in. And you have to add all that stuff up because it affects your equity position. So let's take the example again. If you have $1 million, you're selling your house for $1 million today, and you bought it for $500,000 10 years ago, and your mortgage is $400,000 today, generally you'd have $600,000 of equity, right? $1 million minus $400,000. But let's say you put, when you bought the house, it cost you about $10,000 with loan fees and that kind of stuff. And when you're selling the house, it's going to cost you about 5 or 6% of the $1 million for brokerage commissions, taxes, etc. So that's about another, let's call it $60,000 to sell it. So $10,000 when you bought it, $60,000 when you sell it, that's $70,000. So your equity is not $600,000 anymore. Now it's $530,000, right? 600 minus that 70,000. And then all the improvements you made during the time of ownership will also negatively hit your equity in the house. So let's say you put $100,000 into the house since you've owned it for 10 years, fixing things, remodeling the kitchen, master bath. So now that 530 now is really 430 because you had cash that you put up into it. So the equity position you have in your house at a current state, you need to include all of those deductions. So in figuring out the equity in your house, whether you're selling it or just not, when you're trying to figure out how much your net worth is, etc., you have to take those things into account. And really the difference, I always say to this when someone talks to me about equity, there's equity, which is just a snapshot in time, and then there's realized equity, which is actually selling the house and getting that check, okay? And they're two very different things. Because equity generally is people just say, my house is worth $1 million, I paid $500, my equity is $500,000. But realized equity is likely going to be less because of those costs of buying, selling, and improving over time. So anyway, I wanted to point that out to you guys because equity is a simple term, means a very simple concept. However, there are things you need to know about it before you take that step of actually selling the house and realizing that equity. It might be a shock, positively and negatively. Have a great week. We'll see you next week on the show. Thanks again for a few minutes of your time today. Take care.